Hello and welcome back to Movie Husbands. Today we're reviewing The Northman. The Northman is directed by Robert Eggers and stars Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Ethan Hawke. It's an epic Viking tale of revenge and fate as Prince Amleth hunts down his uncle to avenge his father's death. So Jeffrey, what did you think about The Northman?
I thought The Northman, Robert Eggers is a genius. No, seriously. So, Robert Eggers made The Witch, which is, one of my favorite horror movies of the past 10 years. He followed that up with The Lighthouse, which I absolutely love, and I think builds on all of the promise of The Witch in really interesting ways and gave me, the David Lynch movie that I needed because David Lynch, isn't making movies anymore. So anyway, I love his filmography of two so far. The Northman, I have to admit, I'm a little more mixed on. You know what's interesting is, maybe we'll get to this later, I think in the hands of a different director, I wouldn't like this movie at all. I think that I have some admiration for a lot of the technical craft here, but I think the storytelling and the thematic elements are really where I'm having some trouble with this film. A lot of my criticism is based in what a filmmaker is trying to tell me and how well they're telling me what they're trying to say. And I think a lot of that gets muddled in this film, or at least what the film is trying to tell me, I'm not really sure what it's trying to tell me, and it feels like it's divergent. A lot of these themes don't necessarily coalesce together very well towards the end of the film. So I'm having some trouble with this one. There's a lot of positive things to say about it, but I'm having a little trouble.
So there's a few things I want to touch on that you did mention, but I'm going to backtrack just a little bit because I don't really have much of a working knowledge of Robert Eggers' films until you showed me The Witch this past week. So we were kind of preparing, and you wanted to prepare me for his film style and get a sense of what he is like as a director. And while I did appreciate a lot about The Witch, I didn't come away feeling very attached to the film, and I know a lot of people really like it. I did have a great sense of appreciation for the film style of the film, though. I felt like I was on the edge of my seat the entire movie. So it obviously did something. I love the way it builds tension in a scene. And immediately from the beginning of the film, you were fearful of the woods without knowing what was in the woods.
Yeah, not to say something that's really, really simple, but I feel like you watch a film like The Witch and you say, this filmmaker really knows what he's doing.
Yes, and there was so much craft that I saw in that movie. And so I'm going to be making some comparisons to that movie when I discuss this review because that's my working knowledge of the director. That being said, I did find it interesting that I'm kind of on the same page as you because I thought, since you like The Witch so much more than I did, that you might come away from this movie liking it more than I did, which is maybe still the case. But I do still agree with you that I did find a lot thematically that I was just kind of searching for. I didn't find something very interesting or something very, resonant or something that was new and being told to me in a new, interesting way in some way. That being said, I do feel there was some things that I still admired about this movie, I think from a visual sense and from a cinematography standpoint, but this might come across as being overly critical in a way, but at times this movie felt like a video game to me. The way that it was shot and its narrative, and I could explain that in three different ways. So the first is the way it was shot. So sometimes I felt like the camera was either following the main character, Amleth, in a way that his visual was in front of the camera, or you would just see his behind, and you would just be walking from behind him. You know how it is in a character in a video game?
Yeah.
Then there would be these cutscenes with these beautiful vistas of horses walking through them.
Yeah. You reminded me too, in video games when you come upon a character who just tells you really, really important information out of nowhere. He has that too. He suddenly sees Björk, and Björk is telling him very crucial information to his journey.
And this is another video game aspect that I found to be is that your only working knowledge of the narrative in this movie is what the main character is involved in. There is not one scene in this film that does not include the main character in it. So your only knowledge of the other characters in the scene, his mother, his uncle, his father, his own awareness of their narratives only exists in the world in which he is present in. It was a very specific and intentional choice, but I'm not sure it was inspired enough to add anything to the movie.
I was going to say, that's not inherently a bad thing, but this character happens to not be very interesting. He's a person that is continually given choices, and he said, "My heart only has vengeance in it." There's so many lines in this movie that would make wonderful black metal lyrics. I just want to put that out there. Like, fire is death, and death is coming, and like things like that people are kind of howling around a fire. I think that the shots are actually really well composed. I think they have a lot of intelligence to them. And I understand how they took you out of the film because they are fairly repetitive. But I actually found that to be one of the best parts of the film, is the way it's shot and how immersive it made me feel, because there is really amazing production value and grandeur in many of these scenes. There's this kind of harrowing scene in the beginning of the film where they're like pillaging this village, and it's shot in one take, but it's not shot in one take in the way that, you know, you think of like Magnolia, where it's really showing off how they're able to do this. Like, oh, how are they able to choreograph this? That's not really something I was thinking about during that scene, but just felt very natural to just immerse yourself in all of this period detail that the film clearly put so much effort into making historically accurate. So that's what I really appreciated about that. I also thought that some of the two-hander scenes, some of the fight scenes that are just two people, the way that those are shot in a oneer actually really tensed me up. And I said, I really like that they're doing this. And to me, it showed that the filmmaker had a lot of control. Like the kind of control that was present in every second of The Witch. That's where I really tapped into that in some of those scenes.
That is one of the takeaways that I do have from this director in particular, is that he does such a fantastic job, and I felt this with The Witch and as this movie as well, is that you feel so immersed in this world that he has created. From the set design and the scenes and the locations that you're in. I think in this movie in particular, I don't know if he had a bigger budget or what the case...
Much bigger.
Yeah, because there was things about The Witch that I appreciate the simplicity of what it was probably a smaller budget, I can only imagine.
I think that The Witch, I'm going off memory here, I think The Witch was like 8 or 9 million. This movie was 75.
Yeah, there was something to appreciate about The Witch because you felt the practicality of a lot of the scenes. And in this movie, exists in a world that's very practical. But there were some scenes that I think extended beyond what was practical, and there was special effects that I found to be noticeably less immersive for me because I noticed them. Mm-hmm. I noticed this actually worst in the first 30 minutes to an hour of the movie, and then I noticed it got better. It was very strange for me. And there was a lot of special effects or backgrounds where I felt like the character was separated from them, like the ship scene. When he first leaves, I felt like the boat was on a soundstage with blue screens around. It didn't feel like it was really in a river, which maybe it was, or maybe it was just the way it was shot. I don't know. I felt like something about that. The characters seemed separated from the rest of the scene, and it didn't feel as immersive. That it stuck out to me. I don't know what
Well, especially when you compare it to the following village scene. That's clearly like they built this village, because the only way to do a big oneer like that is to actually build a huge set. Let me tell you the main trouble I'm having with this movie. And I know I said at the top of this that I'm very attached to themes. I'm very attached to a filmmaker who's trying to communicate to me. So I'm having a lot of trouble with the violence in this movie. And the reason being is early in the film, I think it very admirably tries to make us feel the weight of violence. Like he's pillaging this village, they are just remorselessly killing people and doing all these horrible things that you feel kind of sick inside, and you say violence is a terrible thing. And there are these themes that are kind of going throughout that are more about like the cycle of violence from generation to generation. But the film also spends, I think, far too much time trying to justify his vengeance also. I think there's a good portion of the second half of the film that it antagonizes some of the characters that he later kills. And in the first part of the film, when I'm feeling the weight of violence and I'm feeling how awful all of this is, how can we then go into the second half of the film when he's getting vengeance and feeling good about his vengeance? I don't know, the thematics of that felt very muddled to me.
He spends a lot of time in his movies dealing with, I don't know, it's interesting how they're mostly like period pieces in a way, but like really old and archaic times of life, in which the weird like conflation of religion and like psychedelics in a way. There's this bridge between the mystical, and I think that's like a running theme in his movies, or just from what I experience, is like how religion is mostly psychedelic and like a made up thing in your head.
But you have these normal kind of stories that mysticism finds its way into in some ways.
Yeah, so it's very weird how it's like a product of your imagination in this film, which tends to play in The Witch as well, very well. But I think its detriment a little in this movie, where in The Witch I felt the importance of those themes. I felt like it completely made sense and it came full circle, where in this movie I felt it was muddled and it meandered a little bit into different things.
Yeah, that's something I love so much about his first two films, The Witch and The Lighthouse, is that there is something to talk about at the end of the movie. There's multiple interpretations of what the movie could actually be about, but you never feel a sense of thematic incoherence. You always feel like you're in control and he's giving you a complete vision, and it's your job to tap into it and say, what is he trying to tell me? But in this film, I felt so many ideas, like divergent ideas coming at me at once, that I was very confused what he was trying to tell me, and it didn't feel like I could tap into it.
So going from there, I do want to talk a little bit about the actors in this movie, which is something I noticed about this film, is that with the exception of Nicole Kidman, which is very obviously Nicole Kidman in this movie, all the other actors were so deep in their roles that I barely even noticed the actor who played them. It took me 30 minutes in the movie to realize that was Ethan Hawke playing the king.
Oh, that's so funny.
At the beginning of the movie. Until it was at his death scene when, the moment happens. And then I noticed like the way his jawline was, and I was like, damn it, that's Ethan Hawke. And that whole time I had no idea.
Oh, see, because I thought that this was like the fourth Before movie, but they were doing time travel. So.
So I think that's just a testament to the actors here themselves, is that they did such a wonderful job, like just filling into these roles that I barely even noticed. I think some of it also is like the men in this movie are very animalistic.
Yes.
It's very strange. Like, I imagine there must have been research on these cultures prior to this.
Robert Eggers is known for his the adherence to period detail and it being so historically accurate that it's like insanely inconvenient for his production designers and stuff that he gets really fixated on these small little details. So I don't know a lot about this era. I imagine that it's very well researched just based off his prior films. Nicole Kidman, so we can talk about her a little bit. She has a wonderful cameo in this movie.
Pretty much.
That's my joke. Yeah, I mean, she's in the background a lot. She's actually in a lot of shots, but she has like two pivotal scenes that I actually think are maybe the best scenes in the movie. The one that she has with Alexander Skarsgård, that's kind of sends the movie in a different direction, let's put it that way, in a spoiler-free section, I think is really interesting. And unfortunately, I don't think the film takes all of the ideas and intrigue from that scene and really capitalizes it on the rest of the movie, because that does reframe what came before, but then it's so quickly forgotten about. I really like that scene. And of course, I mean, Nicole Kidman is like a tremendous actress, so it doesn't shock me how well she was able to pull that off. But I wish that they had capitalized on that more.
Yeah, and going back a little bit, I think that was one of the problems with the movie, is because your only knowledge of the other characters was whether the main character was in the same room as them, is that you didn't get much from the other characters at all. That being said, I would say every other main or sub-supporting character got like a little monologue that was really cool. Anya Taylor-Joy got one on the boat towards the end of the movie, which was really well done as she's like walking towards the camera. I thought that was fantastic. And same with, as you said, Nicole Kidman and Ethan Hawke as well. And so I think all of them got their little moment to shine in a way that I thought worked really well, but it left me feeling a little bit like their talent was wasted or just not utilized enough to which it could have benefited the film more.
So you ready to go to grades?
Yes, I am ready to go to grades. Wow, I didn't really actually give this much thought yet. I'm going to give this a B-. I think I need a little bit more time reflecting on this. We did watch it just 2 hours ago. That being said, I think just everything that I already described, my problems with the movie, but the good things as well. The acting, it was very immersive. I do love the world that it created. Some of it did feel very been there, done that though, in a sense of, these time period movies of Vikings and kings and queens. Some of that felt a little bit repetitive to me.
Yeah, I think if you take some of the craftsmanship from a directorial perspective out of this, I think it's kind of like a mid-budget movie from the 90s that's been forgotten about. I'm also going to give this a B-. I really feel bad not rating this higher because this is a fairly large budget mainstream film that's in wide release this weekend, and I'm always like rallying against Marvel, and I want more original films. I want more films like this, and this film has enough of kind of like a weird tinge to it that I like that it exists, but I just don't think it totally comes together. We didn't get to mention this, but I think the film is too long. It feels like a bit of a slog. It feels a bit laborious. It has the Return of the King multiple ending syndrome. So, I don't know. There's definitely some things to appreciate here. I have no doubt that Robert Eggers is like one of our best living filmmakers. Like, I don't think that this film tarnishes that at all. I think that this is directed tremendously well on a lot of levels, and he clearly is an original voice in filmmaking. But I feel a little more lukewarm. I wish I felt more positive.
All right, that's it for our review of The Northman. The Northman is now currently in theaters only, so go check it out. If you've already seen The Northman, let us know in the comments what did you think about the film. And thank you guys as always for watching. We'll see you next time.